All right, go ahead and make your prediction right now. You are a senior officer in the most powerful military on the planet. You have spent your entire career earning that rank. You have the respect of your peers, the trust of your emperor, and a future that most men in the ancient world would have killed for. And then your boss, the most powerful man alive, walks into a room full of every important person you have ever worked with and asks you to do the one thing, one simple thing: make a sacrifice to the gods. A formality, a gesture, something every other officer in that room is already lining up to do without a second thought. What do? Most people say they'd stand their ground. Most people, when the moment actually arrives, discovers that standing your ground is a lot harder when standing your ground means the will. Not the metaphorical will, an actual will, fitted with iron spikes that they strap you to and spin. Today we are talking about St. George, the great martyr, a man so difficult to kill that the Roman Empire had to genuinely get creative about it. A man whose legend grew so large over 17 centuries that a dragon had to be invented just to give the story a villain worthy of him. And a man whose red cross still flies over England, whose name still covers the map of the entire planet, and whose icon has been performing miracles, documented, witnessed, argued over by bishops since the year 1919. And almost none of you know the actual story. So let's fix that. Born in the later part of the 3rd century AD, somewhere around 275 to 280, George came from Cappadocia, which is modern-day Turkey. And right out of the gate, his life is already playing on hard mode. His father was a Christian. In the Roman Empire, at this particular moment in history, being a Christian was not illegal yet. But it was the kind of thing that would become very illegal very quickly, depending on who was in charge and what mood they were in. His father understood that risk. His father took it anyway, and his father paid for it. Martyred for his faith while George was still young. So George grows up without a father. His mother takes him to Palestine, to Lydda, in what is now modern Israel, where she has some land. She raises him right. She raises him in the faith. And then she dies too. By the time George is a young man, he has no parents, no safety net, and exactly one thing going for him. He is apparently exceptional at being a soldier. Now here's where it gets interesting, because George does not just join the Roman army, he excels at it. He rises through the ranks so fast and so impressively that he ends up serving directly under Emperor Diocletian himself. He is commended multiple times for excellent service to the empire. He is the kind of officer that emperors notice, the kind of officer that gets invited into the room when important decisions are being made. Which is exactly how he ends up in Caesarea in 303 AD, standing in front of Diocletian at the meeting that changes everything. Okay, real quick, oversimplified version of what is going on here. Diocletian has just finished suppressing the barbarian tribes that were hammering the empire's borders. He has secured the frontiers. He has stabilized the military. And now he turns his attention inward, because Diocletian believes the genuine conviction that a unified state religion is what keeps an empire from falling apart from the inside. The state religion is paganism. Christianity is growing, and Diocletian decides that Christianity has to go. In 303 AD, he summons his senior officers to Caesarea. He holds 3 general meetings. He lays out the plan: persecute the Christians, destroy their churches, burn their books, force them to sacrifice to the Roman gods, or face the consequences. And then he asks every officer in that room to prove their loyalty by making a pagan sacrifice on the spot. Every single one of them does it, except George. George stands up in front of Diocletian, in front of every potential person he has ever worked with. And he does not just quietly refuse. He declares himself a Christian. He tells Diocletian directly about the Christian faith. He tells him about the crucified Nazarene. He tells him that the kingdom of heaven is worth more than anything the Roman Empire can offer him. Now I need you to understand the social and professional suicide this represents. This is not a private conversation. This is not a letter of resignation. This is a senior military officer standing up in a room full of his peers and his emperor and publicly calling out the entire premise of the meeting. This is the Roman equivalent of a four-star general standing up at a Pentagon briefing and telling the President of the United States that he is wrong, in front of every other general in the building. Diocletian, to his credit, does not immediately execute him. He is reportedly impressed by George's courage. He offers him a deal: sacrifice to the gods, keep the rank, keep the life. George says no. Diocletian orders him taken to prison, and then the creativity begins. Alright, this is the part of the story that the sanitized versions always rush through, and I refuse to do that, because what happens next is genuinely extraordinary, and you need to hear all of it. Round 1. They put a boulder on his chest. The idea is that the weight crushes him slowly overnight. The next morning, they bring George back before Diocletian. George is fine. He tells Diocletian about the riches of the kingdom of heaven. Diocletian is not moved. George is not dead. Everybody is confused. Round 2, the wheel. They bind George to the rim of a wheel fitted with sharp iron spikes, and they spin it. This is not a carnival ride. This is a device specifically engineered to tear a human body apart. Diocletian, who apparently has some complicated feelings about George, actually asks him at this point to just sacrifice to the gods and save himself. George refuses. He prays, and according to the account, he hears a voice from heaven say, "Do not fear, George, I am with you." The will has no effect. George appears before Diocletian not only unharmed, but, and this detail is in the historical record, surrounded by what witnesses describe as an angelic aura. At which point, two Roman officers named Anatolius and Protleon, watching all of this, walk forward with 2,000 soldiers and declare themselves Christians on the spot. Diocletian has them all executed immediately.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Round 3, the lime pit. They dig a pit, fill it with quicklime, drench George with water, and throw him in. Quicklime plus water is a chemical reaction that generates intense heat and caustic burns. The idea is that it destroys the body slowly over days. Come back to clear the pit. George is still sitting at the bottom, unharmed. Diocletian demands to know what kind of magic he used. George tells him it was not magic, it was God. Round 4, iron sandals. They nail iron sandals to his feet and force him to run while they beat him. He runs. Round 5, merciless beatings. He remains unharmed. He retains what the accounts describe as his angelic appearance.
Hey, I didn't hear no bell.
At this point, Diocletian is convinced that George is a magician. So he calls in an actual magician, a man named Athanasius, and gives him 2 vials. The first one will drive George insane. The second one will kill him. George takes the first vial, prays, drinks it. Nothing happens. Athanasius, watching this, has what can only be described as a professional crisis. He realizes that whatever George has is not magic. It is something else entirely. He confesses his belief in the Christian God on the spot. Diocletian has him executed immediately. Then Diocletian's own wife, the Empress Alexandra, witnesses the miracles and confesses her belief in Christ. Diocletian has her imprisoned, and then George has a dream in which Christ tells him that he will receive the crown of martyrdom and eternal life. And George wakes up apparently at peace with the whole situation. So Diocletian, having run out of torture ideas, tries one more approach. He takes George to the pagan temple and asks him one more time to just make the sacrifice.
No, I don't think I will.
Just do it. It is over. End this. George walks into the temple. He makes the sign of the cross. The idols are destroyed. The priests are furious. The crowd is furious. They demand that Diocletian execute him immediately. And Diocletian, who has been trying to kill this man for what the accounts suggest was an extended period of time involving multiple failed attempts, finally gives the order. George is taken outside the city. He turns his head towards the executioner, and he is beheaded, April 23rd, 303 AD, somewhere between 23 and 30 years old. His servant collects his relics and his testament and travels to Palestine, where the Christian community buries him with reverence and honor in Lydda. And then, because the story does not end with a grave, the miracles start. Now here's where the story gets genuinely strange, and I want to be upfront with you. What I'm about to describe comes from hagiographic accounts, meaning religious historical records written by people who very much believed every word of what they were writing. So take the supernatural elements with whatever grains of salt you need. But the volume of documented accounts, the geographic spread of them, and the specific details are worth paying attention to regardless of where you land theologically. Miracle 1. A woman in Rome has purchased a marble pillar for a church being dedicated to St. George. She has no way to transport it. It is too heavy, too large, too expensive to move. She dreams of St. George. In the dream, he helps her lift the pillar and throw it into the sea. She wakes up. The pillar is found in Rome, at the church on the right side, exactly where she wanted it, with instructions attached. Miracle 2. In the city of Phalegonia in Pontus, a young man named George, named after the saint by his devout parents, is captured in battle and enslaved by a barbarian officer. His parents, believing him dead, mourn for a year. On the feast day of St. George, they invite relatives to dinner and pray for a sign. That same evening, their son is drawing water for his master when he prays to St. George to reunite him with his family. A horseman appears on a white horse. It is St. George. The boy finds himself instantly in his parents' house at the dinner table with his family eating. You can imagine how that dinner went. All right, the dragon. We have to talk about the dragon. The dragon legend is not in the earliest accounts of George's life. It develops over centuries and becomes fully formed in the medieval period. The Golden Legend, written in the 1200s, is where the accounts come from, and the story in its standard version goes like this. In the city of Salem in Libya, some accounts say Selene, there is a large pond. In the pond lives a dragon. The dragon terrorizes the surrounding area, and the people have been feeding it 2 sheep a day to keep it away from the city walls. Eventually they run out of sheep, so they start feeding it people, chosen by lottery. One day the lottery lands on the king's daughter. The king offers everything he has to swap his daughter out. The city says no. The princess is dressed and walked to the pond. George arrives. He is a soldier on a horse, passing through. He sees the princess. She tells him to ride away before the dragon comes. He says no. The dragon appears. George charges it, wounds it with his lance, and then, this is the detail people always forget. He does not kill it immediately. He tells the princess to throw her belt around the dragon's neck. She does. The dragon follows her like a dog on a leash back into the city. George tells the people, I will kill this dragon, but first you have to be baptized. The city converts. George kills the dragon. Thousands are baptized. Now here's what the document from the church itself says about what this icon actually represents. Because the iconographers who first painted it were not painted in a fairy tale. They were painting a theological statement. The dragon is Satan. George is conquering evil. Or, and this interpretation is equally supported, the dragon is Diocletian, the beast that demanded human sacrifice in the form of Christian martyrs. And the princess in the background, she could be the Empress Alexandra, who watched George triumph. She could be Christianity itself. She could be the church. When the Crusaders traveled through the Byzantine Empire and saw this icon, they did not know the theological backstory. They saw a soldier on a horse killing a monster and saving a woman. They took that image back to Western Europe and it spread across the entire medieval world. The dragon is a really good visual for what George actually did. He rode toward the thing everyone else was running from. He stood between the powerful and the powerless. He was given every opportunity to save himself, and he declined every single time. The dragon is just the honest version of Diocletian with better marketing. Here's the part that ties the whole thing together. After George's death, his servants bring his relics to Palestine. The Christian community buries him in Lydda with reverence. Time passes. Constantine becomes emperor, the first Christian emperor of Rome, and under the direction of his mother, St. Helen, a church is built in Lydda over the site of George's burial. It is consecrated on November 3rd. The Christian community in Lydda grows so large that by 325 AD, its bishop attends the first ecumenical council at Nicaea. In the 5th century, the Basilia becomes a major pilgrimage site. Then the Arab conquest in the 7th century. Then the Crusaders rebuilt it into a fortified cathedral. In 1260, the Mamelukes destroy it. In 1268, the Muslims build a mosque on part of the ruins, and they incorporate the stonework from the earlier churches into the mosque, including a Greek inscription on one of the pillars that reads, "Those administering the city of old adorned this splendid edifice sacred to the glory of Christ." In 1870, the Orthodox received permission to build a church on the remaining ruins adjacent to the mosque. The current Church of St. George in Lydda is built in 1893 over the ruins of the Crusader Cathedral. The tomb of the great martyr is in the crypt. A set of chains, used to restrain the demonized who came seeking healing, is attached to a column at the right of the iconostasis. People still come, miracles are still reported, and then there is the reach of this man's legacy across the world. George becomes the patron saint of England, brought there by the Crusaders, cemented by Richard the Lionheart, made official by Edward III, who founded the Order of the Garter in 1348 and dedicated it to St. George. The knighting ceremony at Windsor Castle on April 23rd, St. George's Day, contains the phrase, "By the grace of God and St. George." He is the patron saint of Syria, Lebanon, Georgia, the country is literally named after him, Ethiopia, Catalonia, and Portugal. He is venerated by Christians, by some Muslim communities, by the Druze. Pope Pius IX declared him patron of the Italian cavalry. The US cavalry adopted his colors, red and white. The French armor force adopted him as a patron. He is the common thread running through the armor and cavalry forces of most NATO nations. The Emperor Constantine dedicated a church to him not long after his martyrdom. A Greek inscription from 368 AD, found in Heraclea of Bethany, refers to the house or church of the saints and triumphant martyrs George and companions. That is one of the oldest surviving documents attesting to his existence, and it is written within less than 70 years after he died. 17 centuries later, his red cross is on the flag of England. His name is on the map of every continent. His icon hangs in churches from Mount Athos to Moscow to Sao Paulo to Lagos. Not bad for a soldier from Cappadocia who could not have been older than 30. So in conclusion, that is the story of St. George, the great martyr. A man who grew up without a father, buried his mother, built a career in the most powerful military on earth, and then threw all of it away in a single moment in a meeting room in Caesarea because he decided that what he believed was worth more than what he had built. A man who was tortured so many times, so inventively, so relentlessly. The wheel, the lime pit, the iron sandals, the poison, the beatings, that the Roman Empire eventually had to just cut his head off and call it a day. A man whose miracles did not stop at his death, whose icon painted itself overnight in a monastery on Mount Athos, whose finger-shaped mark is still on that icon because a bishop got too clever for his own good, whose relics still draw pilgrims to a crypt in Lydda, a crypt that has been destroyed and rebuilt and built over and built around for 1700 years and is still there. A man whose dragon, invented centuries after his death to explain what he was like, turned out to be the most accurate description anyone ever came up with, because George was exactly the kind of man who sees the dragon, knows what it is, charges it anyway, and then hands the rope to the person who was most afraid. The church calls him the great martyr. The soldiers call him patron. The nations put his cross on their flags and his name on their maps. And all of it, every bit of it, started with one man standing up in a room full of people who were all sitting down. That is the whole story. That is all there ever was. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel, like and subscribe. In the comments, let me know which saint is your favorite. Have a blessed day.